All right, Jimmy Ott Paul Stone talking college basketball. This is a late Tuesday night to start, and again, the Wednesday slate. A lot of great action on Tuesdays and Wednesdays in college hoops. Paul, let's start in the SEC and Arkansas in LSU. Arkansas 5.5. We're projecting this line at LSU. LSU is 2-8 overall in the SEC, but they are 6-4 against the spread. It took them to really dig themselves a hole in the SEC standings before even Joe Lunardi took them over the first four out or the next four out. The metrics loved them. They were like 1-4 in the SEC and still in the mid 40s in bubble range. And it's not what I saw with my eyes as far as the eyeball evaluation. So a lot of the metrics in their ATS record in the conference has kept these numbers within range. Now, you're still catching 5.5 at home. Home means literally there's like 20, I don't know, 200 fans at the games. It's really, really bad. So McMahon is going to have a hard time retaining his job at the end of the season. It's bad. They booed him in one game a couple of games back, but none. And then they got routed by Georgia on Saturday. Even after having a 15-point lead in the first half, they got outscored by 20 to close the first half. And Georgia wins by close to 20, easily covering the spread. LSU actually opened up a 1.5-point favorite in that game. Arkansas and LSU 2.5 weeks ago in Fayetteville, 85-81. This one was tied with 7.5 minutes to go. Why I bring that up? Because Arkansas will take LSU seriously after really one of LSU's better performances in Fayetteville. 2.5 weeks from now, they certainly took care of business on Saturday at the Hump in Starkville. I like this Arkansas team laying a soft number here at 5.5 in Baton Rouge.
Yeah, you mentioned the game, Jimmy, a little over 2 weeks ago in Fayetteville. Tight the whole way through. Arkansas ultimately prevails 85-81. And as you also mentioned, I think it kind of serves as a little wake-up call for Arkansas with regards to this return trip to Baton Rouge to play the Tigers the second time. And also Thomas, LSU's top player, Jordan Thomas Jr., he played in the first meeting, won't play in the rematch due to a foot injury. LSU, obviously a different team with Thomas in the lineup, so his absence is quite significant. Arkansas, meanwhile, they won their last two road games. They won at Oklahoma 83-79 back on January 27th, and then more recently won at Mississippi State there in Starkville 88-68 this past weekend. You look at this Arkansas team, and in a year we've talked about it often on the podcast this season, but in a year where there's so many outstanding true freshmen, Arkansas certainly has one of the very best in Darius Acuff Jr., 20 or more points in 6 of his last 7 games, averages 20.5 points per game, also leads the Razorbacks in assists at 6.3 assists a game, gets 3 rebounds. So Acuff, again, an outstanding freshman for Arkansas. I think LSU will merit the Hogs' full attention here. So I like where you're going with your selection of Arkansas on the road there in Baton Rouge as the favorite.
Yeah, LSU point guard Thomas, who led the conference in assists heading into conference play. That was for non-conference play. Has been mostly unavailable. I think he was there for 5 of the 10 games, but expected to be out the remainder of the season. That's right. He did play in that first game in Fayetteville. Get a $10 bonus bet to use on college basketball with this special giveaway from Bet Rivers and College Sports Rush. Go to your Bet Rivers app and enter the bonus code CSR22 to get a $10 bonus bet to use on any college basketball game. That code again is CSR22 for College Sports Rush. Offer ends on February 15th. Must be 21. Eligible players only. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Let's move on. Paul, one of your picks, and stay in the SEC and the Florida Gators. Florida Gators lost 4 games back at home to Auburn, about 9. It was a real shocker. Favored by double digits in that one. Defending champs, it seemed like they were starting to get things rolling. Championship hangover for the young coach and the young Gators. Well, maybe a little bit at first, but I chalk it up to a really brutal non-conference schedule as well. So then they, the last 3, they have beaten South Carolina in Columbia, Alabama in Gainesville on that national televised game on a Sunday. And then A&M, the top team in the SEC standings at that point, by a combined 89 points a wake-up call maybe for the Gators with that Auburn loss. They have been rolling since. Projected a line to be 6.5 in Athens tomorrow, Wednesday, 7 p.m. Eastern tip. Remember this game last year? The Dogs jumped all over the Gators, 41-16. Florida storms all the way back, takes a lead, and then the Dogs pull it out at the end. It was a wild, wild game in Athens last year, and a pivotal one to get Georgia an NCAA berth. Paul, Florida 6.5 here on the road in Athens.
Yeah, first of all, talking about the Georgia Bulldogs here, they stormed out to that 13-1 start, ascended all the way up to number 18 in the AP poll, but they've come back to earth a little bit now that SEC play is in full swing. They've won just 4 of their last 9 games, but it's not like they've gone into a total free fall or a total collapse. SEC, obviously one of the nation's toughest leagues. It's going to be a dogfight each and every night, especially on the road. You look at this Florida team, on the other hand, they were a team, they were banged up a little bit early. The defending national champion Gators played a very challenging non-conference schedule. Actually got off to a 5-4 start. They were 5-4 9 days into December. Again, though, that schedule was quite difficult. 3 of their early losses were to the likes of Arizona, Duke, and UConn, so they weren't just losing to anybody there. So no reason to be alarmed. The Gators have gotten healthier. They have righted the ship since league play began, and presently they lead the SEC by half a game over Kentucky and a full game over Arkansas and Texas A&M. They've got star power. They've got big time players, and to win national championships and to be a contender again this year, you have to have those kind of guys. And certainly 6'9" junior forward Thomas Howell is one of those Gators, played a pivotal role down the stretch last year in their national championship run. He's projected by virtually every service out there as a top 20 selection in the upcoming June NBA draft. He can pretty much do it all. He can score. He averages 17.4 points per game. He can rebound, 6.5 rebounds a game. He can pass the ball, 2 assists a game. He can certainly defend. And he can also shoot the three a little bit. Tall guy, but he can pull out and shoot the three. He shoots 35% from beyond the arc. And then, probably to me, one of the more exciting players, just because of the energy that he plays with, the length that he plays with, Ruben Chinchalu, just a tremendous defensive player, 6'9", from Nigeria, just very athletic, can cover you all over the half court, just a big-time player there. I think most people consider him the top interior defender in all of college basketball. Also a great rebounder, 11.5 rebounds per game. And in this matchup, I just like Florida's trajectory better. They're still ascending. I think they're still climbing the ladder and getting better. I think Georgia, I think they might have peaked about January 1st. And I think, this caliber of opponent at this point is going to be pretty tough for the Bulldogs, even at home. You look at Florida's 8 SEC victories. Only one of those have been by fewer than 15 points. So they don't just beat you. They beat you pretty good. And you mentioned some of those victories as well. So I think Florida is going to go into Athens, get away with a nice victory. We project the line at -6.5. I would play the Gators up to about -7.5 over Georgia.
This might be the only team in the Florida Gators that I think are in the mix, and I've got about 12 to 14 teams that I think that can win the whole thing this year, and I'm trying to search for another one. I'm not so sure if the SEC this is not the SEC of a year ago, but Florida has that chance, and you talked about that front line, man, with Chinegu, he's like Moses Malone on the offensive glass. I mean, he is just relentless, man. You talked about 11.5 rebounds a game. So how goes back. Remember that Texas Tech Elite 8 game last year? It was him and the transfer guard from Iona but it was Houck who hit some key threes in that comeback against Texas Tech in the Elite 8 game. And then you got Condon, who really is, man, that's a lot of size, a lot of mobility down low. And so the only thing that's kind of keeping this Florida team from really getting after it is, how do they handle? How's the young coach in Golden, handle, the championship hangover and handle success. So seems like they got their hunger back in a big way as they pounded people. And maybe Georgia's style of play caught some people off guard a little bit. I mean, the fastest pace of play team in college basketball, number one in scoring for a big stretch. And that's not a typical style of play for Mike White. We didn't see that in Ruston at Louisiana Tech or in Gainesville at Florida. So maybe their style of play, people are getting a little bit used to it and kind of handling it a little bit better. Yeah, but it does seem like they've peaked a little bit earlier. So Florida, and also I've got to believe it's fresh in their minds, an easy motivational message to your team. Remember last year, not only did we lose, we fell behind by 25 before we tried to make it a game. Let's move on to the Big Ten and the Michigan Wolverines. When the Michigan Wolverines early, and you got these high-profile tournaments, and the one in Las Vegas is it's clearly emerged with the money that they've put forward into it. They're supposed to expand on it next year, but probably the elite early conference tournament, pre-conference tournament, and Michigan just destroyed them. Michigan in neutral court beat San Diego State, Auburn, and Gonzaga by a combined 100 points. So the odds makers, the betting public, they went crazy. They had to adjust the lines and keep in mind with such a turnover in roster from year to year in college basketball. I mean, there's a lot more fluidity in the power ratings that the odds makers keep and the handicappers. The trying to adjust. So the adjustments are more drastic. You saw to where Michigan was, it was like 2.5 to 1 at some places to win the whole thing. That is an extremely short price. I mean, that's maybe some of the best Duke teams, an LV team. I mean, some really, really special teams. It's calmed down a little bit since. What happened was when they elevated their power rating, Michigan continued to win for the most part, but was not covering. They did not cover seven in a row. Seven in a row. So you see their ATS right there. As good as they are, they're just 12 and 11 against the spread. In 3 games back, they were 9 and 11 against the spread. I think they're kind of getting back in focus right now. Really like the game on Sunday where they went to Columbus, Ohio. This could have been a tricky spot, could have been a close game. It was no contest. So really like the way Michigan has kind of rebounded their last three as they're on a 3-0 ATS run. Go to Princeton to take on Northwestern. Um, the big guy for Northwestern, he's been there for a while. He's a nice player. He's statistical, but this is not one of their better teams. With the Collins, a young coach. Doug Collins' son. So it's this is just a mismatch in a team that is focused again. It's a big number now at 14 and a half. We're projecting it at, but I'm going to lay it with the Wolverines on the road, who seem to be back on track in their dominating fashion.
Yeah, talking about Chris Collins, the head coach there at Northwestern. Hard to believe. It still seems like he's just a young man, but this is his 13th season now there in Evanston. And for most of those 13 years, Northwestern's been a tough out. They hadn't been one of the very best teams in the conference, but they've been a difficult out for most Big Ten teams. Certainly even more so there in Evanston on their home floor. And this is a team that actually won a tournament game, NCAA tournament game in 2023 and in 2024. So they won an NCAA tournament game just 2 seasons ago. But with 7 games remaining in conference play, the Wildcats are only 2 and 11 in conference play. Collins certainly in danger of posting his worst conference record there since taking over at Northwestern prior to the 2013-14 season. Then you look at this Michigan team. You mentioned some of the big victories. They obviously can roll over people. They're 22 and 1, certainly among the handful of favorites to perhaps cut down the nets come April in Indianapolis. But the Wolverines, they've been on a good tear recently. You mentioned that as well. Blowed out Ohio State this weekend by 21 in Columbus on Super Bowl Sunday. Before that, they hammered Penn State by 41 points. And then just a few days before the Penn State victory, went to East Lansing, played their rival Michigan State. I really thought Michigan State had a chance to win that basketball game, but Michigan controlled it pretty much throughout, beat the Spartans by a dozen points. So Michigan really playing well here, and they're certainly capable of winning big in Evanston.
All right, Paul, let's get to one of yours. Let's go to the ACC and the Clemson Tigers at 20-4 against Virginia Tech Hokies. I had the Hokies on Saturday, and they were feisty in Raleigh against the North Carolina State Wolfpack, and managed to come under the number. So it was kind of floating around that number for a good part of the second half, but it does come under the number. Keep in mind, it does. And I know NC State got waxed in the Yum Center at Louisville last night, but when they went to Clemson, they were kind of the stronger team. So similar number here for the Hokies on this road, back-to-back trips to Raleigh on Saturday, and now on Wednesday, 7 p.m. tip, 7 p.m. Eastern tip at Little John Arena in Clemson. So the Hokies is what you're looking at, plus the points here.
Yeah, I tell you, Will Wade, first of all, Will Wade, NC State, after getting beat, almost got beat by half 100 at Louisville last night. He's probably not in a good mood this morning. But to the matters at hand, Virginia Tech going to Clemson after losing by 9 over the weekend at NC State, even though they did get the cover. And both of us, I believe, had the Hokies on that one.
Yeah.
One would have to believe after that loss that Virginia Tech is no longer one of the first 4 teams out, which is where they've kind of been the last couple of bracketologies. You would have to think they're on the outside looking in at this point. They've lost 3 of their last 4 games. They're below 500 in ACC play. So I clearly think they're on the outside looking in when it comes to the NCAA tournament field as we speak. But there is time. They still have 7 regular season games remaining, plus the ACC tournament. So they've got the opportunity to impress the selection committee, and 3 of the Hokies' final regular season 7 opponents are all ranked in the net top 30. So if they get a victory there, those will be a quad 1 victory against any of those 3 opponents. Clemson currently ranked 30th in the net, so they would qualify as a quad win if Virginia Tech was able to go into Clemson and get the victory. I mean, this is a Virginia Tech team again. They're not among the ACC's elite this year, but they've really been pesky. They've got some good pieces. I think the most notable of those is their 6'8" junior forward, Amani Hansberry, averages 15.2 points a game, 8.2 rebounds, adds 2.7 assists, 1.6 steals. So he's a guy who can impact the game in a whole lot of different areas. So Hansberry, kind of one of the better players in the ACC that I think kind of flies under the radar a little bit. You look at this 20th ranked Clemson team in the most recent AP poll. They're 20-4 on the season, 10-1 in ACC play. I don't think too many people think in these terms, but they're actually tied with Duke atop the ACC standings as we speak. And they go to Duke this Saturday, February 14th, going to Durham in a big-time basketball game. So I think Clemson also, they might kind of have one eye looking towards Durham, a natural inclination there. So this could be a look-ahead game for Clemson. Virginia Tech, they played a lot of teams tight all season long. I hadn't won a ton of them, but I think they can keep it close again against the Clemson Tigers. I'll take Clemson plus 9.5 at Virginia Tech, rather, plus 9.5 over Clemson.
Great spot talking about that Saturday matchup, that high-profile matchup with the Dukies on Saturday. So yeah, maybe a little bit of a look-ahead spot against the Hokies on this Saturday. Let's go back to the SEC, and this year's SEC. We knew this once the non-conference schedule was pretty much done, and they started conference play in January. This is not going to be last year's SEC, where 14 of the 16 teams made it to the field of 68 a year ago. And not only that, you break it down into quadrants, and you're looking at teams. It looks like the top 4, next 4, the third 4, and the bottom 4. The bottom 4. A team that's been to the NCAA tournament the last 2 years and love their coach Jans, but Mississippi State is just not performing, especially with Hubbard back for a 3rd season. You thought that, maybe on paper they were going to be pretty good, but they just haven't. And the atmosphere at the hump has not been the same as well. It was popping for Ole Miss. Ole Miss, Mississippi State, anything. They play in Tiddlywinks. It's going to be popping there. Alabama was popping as well, but some of the other atmospheres, just gaps of empty seats at the hump in Starkville. So that's where they play again. And we saw another one where Arkansas went in there and beat them soundly by about 20 and led by double digits for most of the game this past Saturday. Tennessee, same type of team, but Tennessee, how? Now, I mean, I had them against Kentucky on Saturday. Not a pick on here, but I had them myself, and I had them both games against Kentucky when they blew 17 and 16-point leads. I mean, I just can't believe that they did it again. Now, Barnes' team, this team, I've talked about it a lot, not quite as good defensively, but they're still good enough to lean on State here and take care of business, especially when they get a lead now. When you lose, it is the biggest coaching opportunities for a coach. Players usually listen a little bit more after a loss. I gotta believe that Tennessee. Maybe I'm just stubborn here, or maybe they've learned from it. But if they get up on Mississippi State, I just don't think they're going to take their foot off the gas here because what has happened to them now multiple times in the SEC. So I'm going to take Tennessee minus the 6.5 in Starkville against State. Again, State just not the team that they were the past couple. They've been the past couple of years in the SEC, Paul.
No, they're not. I tell you, but things did start out well for Mississippi State this year in SEC play. They went into Austin there right after New Year's in their SEC opener, beat the Longhorns in overtime. Josh Hubbard had a huge game. I think he had 38 in that game against the Longhorns. And then they actually followed that up with a home win over Oklahoma. So they start out 2-0 in SEC play. But as you alluded to, absolutely nothing, almost nothing has gone right for the Bulldogs since that 2-0 start in SEC action. They've lost 7 of their last 8 games, and 5 of those losses by 15 points or more. So they hadn't even been competitive against some of the better teams in the league in recent weeks. Haven't been able to even hold serve on their home court. The Hump, where they've usually been a pretty tough out and a pretty difficult opponent for traveling SEC foes, but that hadn't even been the case in recent weeks. They've lost outright and against the spread in their last 4 games in Starkville. So you've got a lot of recent history on your side here. I think Tennessee coming off a loss even makes things a little bit more difficult from the Mississippi State perspective. You would, as you do, I would expect Rick Barnes to have the Volunteers focus, have them, their eye on the target as they go to Starkville. This isn't going to be a game, I don't think, where the Volunteers are going to get caught napping.
7 of 8, the Bulldogs have lost in the SEC since that 2-0 start that you talk about, and you don't get any credit for beating LSU. I'm just sorry, not this year. So anyway, let's move on to the last one. And Paul, you're looking at the team and how have they done since they pulled the biggest upset maybe of the year by the point spread and by the money line, but that's when Gonzaga lost to Portland. Out in the West Coast Conference recently. Now Portland makes a trip to God's country in San Diego, where they are 1.5-point favorites in San Diego. You're looking maybe a little home dog here.
Yeah, and I actually snuck another one in on you, so I've got 2 left.
Okay.
I'm gonna go to Boston after this one and talk about Boston College hosting Stanford. But man, I tell you that Portland game, them beating Gonzaga, just I think that's kind of what makes college sports so much fun for so many of us. Just when you get that unexpected, inexplicable type victory, but a nice adage, I think, to apply to our sports handicapping toolbox in certain situations, I think, is what goes up must come down. The University of Portland Pilots. I'm gonna give me a quick drink here. Sorry about that, kind of losing my voice. Excuse me. But the University of Portland Pilots, they pulled off, what I think inarguably is the biggest upset of the NCAA men's basketball season to this point. They're hosting Gonzaga as a 22.5-point home underdog, and they just stunned the 6th-ranked Gonzaga Zags 87-80 back on Wednesday, February 4th, a week ago. And then 3 days later, I don't dismiss this either, 3 days later on February 7th, again in the role of a home underdog, this time only getting 3.5 points, Portland nipped Seattle 54-53 on Portland's home floor. So 2 upset victories back to back. And those two victories have certainly been impressive. But I like to point this out: the Pilots played 24 games prior to that 2 game set, prior to this 2 game mini win streak, however improbable it has been. And you look at their games leading up to, first of all, the Gonzaga upset. In the game prior to upsetting the Zags, Portland lost by 30 at Washington State. Earlier in the season, the Pilots previously lost by more than 20 points at Pacific, at St. Mary's, and at Oregon. They fell by 37 at Wyoming earlier in non-conference play, and Wyoming currently in 10th place in the 12-team Mountain West. So they have had their troubles certainly on the road. They have been beat decisively by some middle road teams. San Diego, certainly nothing to write home about this season. They really had a nice year last year, but Steve Lavin's Toreros this year, not quite as good. They have defeated, though, I think on their home floor, teams that are superior to Portland. Washington State certainly is going to be rated higher by all the metrics than Portland. San Diego beat Washington State. They're in San Diego. They also defeated a Pacific team that ranks higher than Portland. Portland, they've had a heck of a week, been a great one, but I expect it to revert to its seasonal norm, if you will. Up to, this game could, as these games around zero or pick tend to do, they could go the other way. San Diego currently projected to be a 1.5-point underdog, but they could, when the game goes off, be the favorite. But I would take San Diego up to about -1 over Portland. I think San Diego is going to win this game, but it could be a close one.
All right, Paul. The one more that we have for you, and our final pick of this podcast, and that is go to the ACC. And we're talking about with the new ACC members of travel. We pay attention to that closely. Stanford here, traveling coast to coast to Chestnut Hill to take on Boston College. In this spot, they are 1-3 on these East Coast trips. They made a Florida trip where they lost by 9 at Miami, then 8 to Florida State and Tallahassee. And earlier in the season, the Virginia trip, they beat Virginia Tech, beat the Hokies in Blacksburg by 1, and lost to the Cavaliers by 15 in Charlottesville. They'll go to Wake Forest after Chestnut Hill, but third time they're traveling here, and they're a couple of games ahead of the Eagles in the ACC standings. But Boston College looked really, really weak earlier. Is improving their play and being a little bit more competitive as of late. Looking at the home dog here, the Eagles catching a projected 3.5.
Yeah, I mean, every season in college basketball, Jimmy, there are a number of teams that aren't necessarily winning games, so they're not drawing a whole lot of attention to their performance, but they are regularly, in some cases, covering games and outperforming market expectations. And as we near, the regular season stretch run, I think Boston College is clearly one of those teams this year. You take a casual glance at the ACC standings, and there's Boston College near the bottom at 2-8 in the league, just a half game out of last place. So that's certainly not not very impressive. But you look at their wins and losses in recent games. They've lost 4 straight games. But as it has been said many times in the past, the point spread can be the great equalizer, the great neutralizer. And I think that's clearly the case at the present in Boston College's case. When you peel back the layers a little bit, you take a closer examination at their recent performance. They have exceeded and outperformed market expectations. I think the market clearly continues to undervalue the Eagles. And don't look now, but as support for that argument, Boston College, they have covered 6 straight games. They have covered 8 of their last 9 games and managed, I think, all along to remain under the betting public's radar, off the betting public's radar, which is good if you're looking to bet Boston College and have been betting them to this point. We're projecting Stanford to be a 3.5-point road favorite here at BC. And if that turns out to be the case, it'll be the first time this year that Stanford has been a road favorite in an ACC game all season. You mentioned their most recent ACC trip to the East this season. Went to Florida State and Miami, Florida, lost those games, as you mentioned, by 8 and 9 points respectively. This is a Stanford team making the difficult trip east. There's so much travel in today's ACC and today's Big Ten, whether you're going east or west. But it's a team that's only won one game in their last 6 games. I don't want to get any less than 3. We project it to be 3.5, but I'll take the points with Boston College up to +3 over Stanford.
That's a great point because if they cover but don't win outright, I mean, it doesn't alert, sort of the odds makers as much because we still look at that standings and they're still near the bottom of the standings. But yeah, 8 out of 9 ATS is a heck of a run. So absolutely one of my favorite angles in handicapping as well. Teams that are quietly kind of losing games but still covering those numbers. So it kind of happened on the flip side with Michigan after a while when they were still winning games, but not covering those inflated numbers when they had their 7 game losing streak. ATS College Sports Rush YouTube channel. Paul and I do it every Tuesday and Thursday. Later this week on Thursday, we will drop the cast. We're talking about the weekend's action in college basketball, all the way through the Final Four and the national championship games. I'm Jimmy Ott for Paul Stone, the College Sports Rush YouTube channel, brought to you for our friends at Bet Rivers.